all the software we have today really have come about in the last 15 years. In 15 years, how many engineers built all that software? It's less than 1% of the world's population. Imagine what can happen when we double, triple, quadruple, 10x the number of people who can now create software through natural language. And that drives more demand for a software lifecycle to quality. And that's where we're excited, because if you think of what GitLab does, we're basically full lifecycle software engineering platform. I did live through the internet and the cloud and the social, but AI, I think it's not just about technology. It's about culture and work and life. It's going to change everything.
Welcome to Grit. I'm Juven, partner at Kleiner Perkins, a show where we go beyond the highlight reel and explore the personal and professional challenges of building history-making companies. Today, we're joined by Bill Staples, CEO of GitLab, a company in the DevSecOps space that's trusted by more than half of the Fortune 100. Bill stepped in the role just a few months ago, most recently as the CEO of New Relic, and before that, 30 years of experience across Microsoft, Adobe, and many others. We talk about Bill's journey stepping into a founder-led company, the challenges and the opportunities, and what comes next. Enjoy the episode. GitLab is one of the OGs of full remote.
There are no offices.
None.
Zero.
So I guess theoretically you could be wherever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
It's contrarian these days, isn't it?
No, well, I know there are some people who, cherish the office. And I do have to say, like, in-person meetings, there's a certain quality you get there that you can't get anywhere else. And so, I do bring the team together and we do, planning events. And
well, I assume that's also why you travel, right? Like
part of the way
travel,
travel,
you go in to meet teams and customers, right?
Yeah.
And there's just some zhuzh that you can't get over Zoom.
Yeah, I'm about to do earnings call at my CFO's house. So
You no way.
yeah,
Here?
he's actually in on the East Coast. So
Is this your first earnings?
no, I've done one for GitLab already. So
Okay, this is your second one.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was public CFO or CEO before, so I didn't.
But I meant your first earnings at GitLab.
Yeah.
Okay. I was GitLab is notorious for having basically everything about the company online, including quite a lot of details about each individual in the company, including you. And one of the quotes that I read that stuck with me on your profile was from George Bernard Shaw. And the quote is that I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live.
Yeah.
I was fascinated that was a quote that you wanted to identify with.
Yeah.
Makes sense now that we're talking about it.
I found it last year while I was, contemplating my next chapter.
Realizing that this is...
Yeah, there's more to that quote. Did you read the whole thing, actually?
No.
Do you mind if I...
Please.
Because, there's a lot of meaning in that quote. Okay.
I'm ready.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is the true joy in life. The being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown out on the scrap heap. The being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I have got hold of for a moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it over to future generations.
Wow.
That's, I found that and I'm like,
I got to get back to work.
that's what I'm here for. Yeah.
Did you think that maybe you could find that purpose channeled elsewhere?
Could
you make yourself useful and find hard work in avenues other than being a tech CEO?
Probably, yeah.
You didn't find it.
You really can't, like I said, like my life, I've been super lucky. I think so much of success is actually luck and timing. And I could never have predicted, at each major step along the way, what would have happened. And so I've kind of learned to just trust that process. Like I am who I am. I'm a pretty passionate, committed person. I just, I like to explore. I like to learn. I like to try lots of different things. And then when I see something, I know it and I go for it. And so that year was basically the process of, really reflecting and contemplating what did I want next. And I kind of looked at like 4 or 5 different paths as possibilities. On the full-time, operator role, I said, if something came along that I'm passionate about the mission, that's number one, non-negotiable. I don't work for money or for fame or for, anything like that. Like I want to devote myself to a cause. That was kind of number one. And I wanted to have impact on the world at the scale at which I've worked before. So public company and growth mode. Those criteria were like super narrowing, constraining, right? Like there's probably a handful of companies or something that would have met that criteria. But I was like, that's what feels right. And if it doesn't come along, it doesn't come along.
And, to be fair, the reason that criteria is so narrow is because if you're the founder, CEO, who is having a mission that they care about, obviously, if they started it, they probably care about it, at scale, public company that's growing, why would they leave?
Yeah, exactly.
They're all usually still there.
Exactly.
It's usually around the time where the impact becomes less diluted or the company has stopped growing.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes sense.
So I could never have predicted that GitLab would have the need that they had. And yet when it came along, it was like a perfect match. I've spent like almost 30 years building software for developers, developer tools and platforms. What better mission? I know the customer, I know the user, I know the, use cases, I know the business model. Like it's a perfect match. And Sid had the need.
Sid was the founder.
Sid's our founder. Yeah. Exec chair now.
And it was a sad need, right? Like it came from health issues, right? That he had to step away from the business.
Yeah. Yeah. He had a recurrence of cancer last year and decided he needed to step down and get that taken care of.
When you feel this strongly about your work, I feel relatively strongly about my work. I always have. At times, I have found that what feels demanding to others is me being passionate about my work. Does that make sense? Like,
you mean when you're passionate about your work, it has an impact on others? They feel it's too demanding, or?
Correct.
Okay.
And that I'm, like if I'm all in and it's like play to me, and I'm doing it on the weekends and late at night, and I would just do my work if I wasn't getting paid for it. There's like, I have found that there can be ripple effects to that.
For sure.
Not everybody, sometimes people just want to have this be their thing as a job.
Yeah.
And then they have, a different part of their life that's the rest of their life.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't feel that way. And sometimes I feel like I lack empathy for those that don't feel the way that I do. And certainly I think that if I'm asking for more or raising the bar of ambition, that creates wake in the organization. Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah, for sure. First I'd say I don't have any judgment on that. I don't think work is the only important cause that someone can devote themselves to. And totally, I have total respect for anyone who chooses something else as what they value and what they want to pour their passions and energy into. And someday that'll be me too. I hope to live to 92 like my dad, and I doubt I'll be doing a CEO.
But if they work for you, do you want it to be their passion?
Yeah, I want
That's
to
what
be,
I mean.
I want to be part of winning teams. And to be part of a winning team, just like in sports or, other types of activities, it requires hard work. It requires, great practice and devotion to the daily rituals. And so, yeah, like I have high standards, high expectations for the people that I work with. It is a different level. I'd say I'm also able to separate it a little bit, I will say, in the CEO role versus any of the other roles I've ever played, including like chief product officer, technology officer, in that at least I experience the CEO role more as a calling, more as a cause than a job, in that the closest thing I can liken it to is being a dad. When you're a dad and you go on vacation, if your kids are old enough to be on their own, it's not like you don't think about them. It's not like you don't pick up the phone call if they call. Like, you're always there for them. And it's the same thing in the CEO role. I'm always there for the company 24/7, 365, doesn't matter. I don't count my hours. I manage my energy. So that means, if I'm feeling out of energy, after a long day of meetings, I'll take a few hours and eat dinner with my wife and try and recharge a little bit, but then I'll be right back at it. Saturdays and Sundays, when something's always going on, I'm always engaged and committed. And I totally do not expect that from everyone. That's not everyone feels that level of accountability to the company as a whole, and nor should they. So I'm able to separate a little bit those expectations from what I model and what I do, but still very high standards. I mean, we want to be a winning team. We got high expectations.
What about your executives? Do you expect it from them?
Like I said, I'm able to separate myself from them, but definitely very high standards for executives.
Define high standards. Like, what do you think of as high standards?
First, I want to surround myself with a team of experts in their function who I can learn from. I've become a pretty good generalist now, having been CEO for several years, and certainly worked around those functions for my whole career. But I want people who can go 10 times deeper than I can in their function, who understand best practices, who understand how to measure and drive performance in that function, and who I'm constantly inspired by. So technically, for their function, I want experts. But for me also, it's really gone beyond that in terms of, I want to surround myself with really great human beings. It's having integrity, having trust in a team is like the most important thing. If there's not trust, if there's not, an ability to tackle the hard problems that come up inevitably in the business with trust and an ability to collaborate, across them, you can't perform as a team. So when I hire people, I'm looking for really good people first and technical experts second now.
Revisiting the point about an earnings, like the earnings report and the day of, let's just say, like you were mentioning, you don't manage by hours, you manage by energy. Like, there's some days where I actually suspect there's a lot of days as the CEO where it doesn't matter what your energy level is. Like, nobody else cares. The problem doesn't care. Wall Street doesn't care. When you're giving an all hands presentation, the company doesn't care,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I wonder, like, on those days, which is most days, frankly, what if the hours are there and the energy just isn't?
Like I said, I do my very best to manage it. So if I know, for example, earnings day, a couple of days, actually, I don't know if most listeners kind of follow or understand or followed that process before, but it's like, you do the earnings call, which is just the start of a very long process, because then you do callbacks with all of the analysts that cover your stock. We have like 35 or more right now. And then you do second day of callbacks with all of the top investors in your stock. And these are like, 1 to 3 or 5 people at a time, where they basically ask you all of their questions as well. So it's like, and it's back to back to back. Every 15 minutes, you're booked with a new party for many hours at a time. Like when I know I'm up against that and I am preparing for that, I conserve energy and prepare for, that marathon for basically 48 hours. So that's all part of managing energy. You can't just go all out all the time. You got to,
what does the active conservation of energy look like? What does that mean?
Make sure I'm getting, 8+ hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm managing stress levels with, exercise, creative outlets. I try to find ways of rekindling my creative energies. Photography is a big passion of mine. So I'll, do photography, or cycling I love as well. So get on the bike and ride for, a couple hours, come back from those feeling a lot more refreshed. It's a lot more mental and emotional energy than it is, physical requirement.
Do you beat yourself up if you don't have the energy that you think you need?
Constantly. I mean, I push myself and have high standards and expectations for myself above everyone else, and I'm constantly falling short of where I wish I was.
Is that true?
Yeah.
So do you feel like you disappoint yourself more often than not?
No, I just I take it. I don't think anyone's a perfect, but I like to aspire to be better tomorrow than I am today, and that's part of that growth journey. Like constantly learning and improving is what I love. You were saying before, I think you love getting in and problem solving, and sometimes that passion isn't shared by those around you. I'm the same way. Like for me, problems are actually part of the fun, like, being curious about like, well, why is this happening? What can we do to mitigate it? What are all the, different angles on it? Versus, I know other people experience it as like, oh, stressful. There's a problem and this is going to blow up and cause all these issues. And, for me, it's like, oh, I mean, sometimes I'm sure I don't act that way, but like, I like to go into and dive into those things. And for me, even if the problem is myself, like I'm failing myself, what I would love to do and how I would like to show up, it's like a chance to step back and say, okay, how can I do that better next time? What can I learn? And
have you ever met anyone, Bill, that has this gene of anxious overachievement without the anxious? Like, have you ever met someone that's super ambitious, that is constantly raising the bar for themselves, that doesn't have the devil on their shoulder whispering that you're not doing enough, that was a bad meeting, you don't have enough energy?
It's hard to know because I think a lot of people maybe don't share that. But I think most successful people that I know, at least, are that way.
Which way?
How
you just described
always
yourself.
striving to, like, Satya as an example. I had a chance to work pretty closely with Satya. Still lucky to be, in touch with him, and how he talks about growth mindset. Like it's a job never done. The minute you say something, you just shut yourself off from learning more. And I think he embodies that. He lives that. He doesn't just talk it.
It's like it's a funny existence that we put ourselves in, like it's there's this weird byproduct that seems to come from it, where it's both the most energy giving and exhausting at the same time.
It's like that George Bernard Shaw quote, right? Like a brief candle. It's burning brightly right now. It's yours to hold, but someday it's time to pass it on. Like, why not burn as brightly and like devote yourself to excellence as passionately as you can while you have the chance? That's my philosophy.
And do you think you can do this if amazing CEO jobs come around till you're 80, You think you can do that?
I doubt I'll last till 80. I don't know, like,
Why not? Like, what would prohibit you from lasting that long?
I don't know. I just think, it does require a lot of stamina. It is draining mentally and emotionally. And at some point, I imagine that will be a limiter for me, or maybe it'll be better for the company for a different CEO to take the reins, a different direction, or a different time. I mean, just think about the world we're living in right now and how rapidly things change with AI, bringing amazing new products. It seems like every day to market right now. Things that we didn't even dream of a year ago are happening. So I can't, I think it's another thing I've kind of learned in life is like not to try to like look too far ahead and become too attached to an outcome that I have no idea if it can or will happen. I just have to live every day in the moment, be the best person I can be, and navigate with what comes. And if it lasts till I'm 80, I'll be grateful. If it lasts another day, I'm grateful.
Your career is littered with you riding these unbelievable technology shifts in companies that are like at the helms of them in many ways. Like, it was at Microsoft for how long? Like
17 years.
From 99 to 2016.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then you go to Adobe.
Yeah.
And this was at the time-ish when Adobe was transitioning to more of a SaaS consumption, like their entire business model.
Yeah.
And then you go to New Relic, which was a kind of a preeminent SaaS company of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're at GitLab, and I don't know, I'm not going to say definitively, but I'm pretty sure there's like 5 to 10 22-year-olds that are like looking at your company right now, salivating about basically re-architecting from the ground up an AI native solution.
Uh-huh.
And they probably do it pretty quick,
Yeah,
relative to what it probably took to get this company to here now. I guess I'm curious, have you ever seen or felt anything like this before?
It was actually one of the reasons I wanted to come back to work at this time as well. As I was defining that criteria, I felt like this technology wave, I think, is the most exciting of all the ones before it. And, I did live through the internet and the cloud and the social, client server, all those different technology waves in the last 30 years that were pretty exciting at the time and, amazing in their own right. But AI, I think, is going to change the world. It's not just about technology. It's about culture and work and life. Like, it's going to change everything. So I wanted to be part of it, in particular for software engineers, because, some of the best application, I think, of AI, and one of the killer use cases, if you will, I think will be software engineering. So to be aligned with that mission is particularly exciting.
I don't know if it will be. I think it already is. I mean,
there's a lot of great products coming to market. Yeah.
We were early investors of a company now called Windsurf, but formerly known as Codeium.
Yeah.
And
congrats.
Thanks. It's a great company.
OpenAI now.
The rumors are out. Nothing has been officially announced, but the rumors are certainly out. And, I've never seen a company grow like this. And you look at other companies in this space, it's not even just Windsurf.
Mm-hmm. Cursor, Copilot, GitLab Duo.
And it is such a good space because it's all structured code that lends itself well to what these frontier models can do well, which is take these structured pieces of text and then spit out something predictive on the other end.
Yeah.
Coupled with software engineering as a profession, which is a thing the world needs much more good ones of. Like, it's the lifeblood of not just tech companies anymore, most companies.
Every company, yeah.
And they're expensive, you know? And so I don't know. It was one of the early use cases through Copilot and Microsoft that took off. And I remember I brought the CEO of GitHub at the time to come speak to this group of CIOs. And this was like not even 2 years ago. And it was like the game in town, growing like 50+% on a gigantic base. And I remember thinking, boy, like Microsoft and GitHub might just like run away with this market. And there was insatiable demand from every company to have a Copilot for their engineers. Then Windsurf's, formerly known as Codeium slides, were all us versus Copilot. And you fast forward not even 18 months. And what I thought was a big market is like the mother of all markets right now. And what I thought was maybe the company, the incumbent at the time, that was going to mop up the floor of this gigantic market, you could argue is in like not even the top 3 right now.
Yeah. I think it just says we're in early days still. This is still early innings.
It's insane.
And it's going to change the world. I mean, literally, it's because, like you said, every company is in some way a software company. They usually use software to either grow their revenues, engage their customers, or they use software to run their company, and automate processes and take care of systems. And so, no matter which kind of company they're both. Software is going to be completely, transformative. I often remind myself, like growing up on the farm, there was no cell phone, There was no smartphone. There was no cloud. There was no apps. There was no social media. There was nothing. This is 50 years ago, less than 50 years ago. And all the software we have today, all those connected devices really have come about in the last 15 years, right? In 15 years. And how many engineers built all that software? It's less than 1% of the world's population. It's a fraction of 1% of the world's population. Imagine what can happen when we double, triple, quadruple, 10x the number of people who can now create software through natural language. I don't even think we can understand what that looks like, the world that is. And it's, I think people who are maybe not as familiar with the process of building software and, the challenges of it might assume quickly, oh, that means there won't be many software developers because machines will be building it all. Like, no, actually, I think just like, when the internet first came about, it was super expensive and there was limited connectivity. The more we've invested in infrastructure and made, the internet pervasive, the faster it's grown, the more it's used, the more applications are on it. Same thing with, airplanes. When they first came out, they were super luxury, for a very small number of cities. The more we've invested and grown the number of, airways and airlines, the cheaper they've gotten and the more people travel. Same thing with code. I believe, it's such tedious work today. Like you have to get the syntax perfectly right, or the code doesn't work, or it has security and other issues. And it's just so incredibly tedious that most people can't do it. Literally, like it's technically so difficult. And if we can use machines to actually create and manage that complexity or help us do that, the prize for like human judgment on both, the design, the architecture, and the software itself is actually going to become even more valuable. And we're going to be much more rapid at innovating and creating software solutions where today, like cost and resource and time, just like it doesn't allow for software to be part of a solution. Tomorrow it can be.
I wonder, like an open question in my mind, standing here today, maybe let's revisit this in 12 months when we sit down again and talk, because God knows the world's going to be quite different.
Yep.
You're talking about the total TAM of software engineers should increase by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People that could traditionally not write software will be able to write software in natural language and just tell the machines to go build something that they otherwise would have to use a programming language to do.
Yep.
So that's like one thing, okay? You could argue, and I'm curious to hear your take, like, well, then are more people going to be just building more shitty software? Okay, like school of thought number one, I don't know. Number two, is this technology, I think the reality is in software engineering, there's a fraction of the people that are delivering a majority of the value, right? So your top 10%, 5% of software engineers are doing 90% or more of the value creation in engineering.
Those 10x engineers.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we're all looking for them. So like, are we going to create more 10x engineers?
Yeah.
And are the 10x engineers going to be 100x engineers? It's like school of thought number two. And then the third, which is if you go talk to Sam at OpenAI or Dario at Anthropic, they're going to say, well, don't worry. Like neither of those questions matter because these models are going to get so good that this idea of like good or bad software engineers is just going to be the AI writing the software. You know, I would love to hear your reaction to that.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the first one. I think, will there be more people creating crappy software? And the answer is, I think yes. And that's actually part of what I'm so excited about with GitLab, right? Because if you think of what GitLab does, we're basically full lifecycle software engineering platform. So everything from people planning and tracking issues through obviously their code, versioning and control, their packaging, building, deploying software, the securing of that software, the compliance standards, the quality, testing and validation, like all of that is what we do. And so while AI right now is making huge waves in the software creation process, primarily in the IDE, the tool that most developers use to author the software, that's the Windsurfs and the Cursors and the Copilots. All that software, in order to actually get deployed into production and actually reach the end user, has to go through a software lifecycle. Like it has to be version controlled. It has to be tested. It has to be security checked. Like the things we do are still very relevant. In fact, I would argue even more relevant if the bar of simplicity is going to go up on creating and authoring code. And enterprises who, rely on GitLab to secure it and make sure it's compliant and meets all of their safeguards, like the demand, I think, is only going to increase. And so then I shift to like, what can AI do for all of those processes? How can we make, the full life cycle of software engineering AI driven? Because, when we study where engineers spend time, it's only like a quarter of the time that they're actually authoring code. The rest of it is all that other stuff. And it's even less fun than authoring code. I just put it that way. So even more beneficial for them to be able to delegate mundane tasks, tedious things to an agent who can go do work on their behalf. So more people writing crappy code, yes, and that drives more demand for a software lifecycle to quality and secure and assess that. And that's where we're excited. I think to the 10x engineer question, that's absolutely what we're like. When I think of what our agent platform should do, it should make more 10x engineers. And for those, gifted 10x engineers today, it should make them even better. You can imagine a world where as a software engineer, you're assigned a set of bugs in the code, and you've got to check out those, issues one at a time, check out the code, look at the code, debug, analyze what's going on, come up with a fix. And you do that one issue at a time. And sometimes an issue can take days and days to debug. Imagine a world where as an engineer, you can instance an agent. In fact, you can instance 10 agents. You can parallelize the debugging and code fixing for 10 issues at a time on the same day in parallel. You can have those agents go do all the tedious checking of the code and looking for issues. they have all the context of issues that have been filed against this code block, security scans that have been run, test passes that have been made, previous deployments, errors in production. They can pull all that context in without you having to do it manually and assess the code to look for, the potential coding error, and then come back to you and say, well, here's what I found, stitching all of that context together. Here's what I think the code error is. Here's a code suggestion for how to fix it. Does it look right to you, human? And I, as an engineer, can parallelize that across 10 issues, can review the work of all the agents. And when I feel good about it, say, go ahead, merge that, code change. That's so empowering for engineers. Like, you would take what's super tedious and a lot of toil, and you'd create something that can elevate their impact in a significant way. That's what we're building.
And what about option 3?
I think, good is always in the eye of the beholder. And so what's good today, most of the time for software is good enough is what it really means. Like, every software project I've been part of has bugs. It's just a matter of finding them and how bad they are. Every software project has usability issues. You try to design them perfectly and get them just right, but there's always corner cases and problems. Not every software project I've worked on is beautiful and elegant and amazing. It requires really skilled, designers to do that. And I think over time, certainly AI will get better at those things. But I think that just means the bar is going to go up. Like, the standard of what we expect from software in terms of quality of design, quality of experience, quality of outcomes is just going to keep going up and up. And I don't think we're anywhere near exhausting the demand for software and the demand for high quality outcomes from our software. And so I don't think this is a anytime soon kind of, we're at the limits of what software can do.
And when you say agents, I hear a lot of different definitions these days for what people think of as agents. How do you think of it?
I think of it as an AI-driven process that is specialized in particular skills. So you build an agent typically focused on a particular domain, and give it the appropriate context to go exercise those skills and execute particular tasks with those skills. And then, agents can obviously talk to each other and, work with each other, share those skills, and then interact with humans to get input or prompt, more prompt on the particular task they're executing.
Internally at GitLab today, have you put part of the team on all right, what's our story here? How are we going to work on this? Who's building the agents? How much are we spending on that? Have you had to kind of...
Oh, it's one of our biggest investments right now, actually. Yeah. Super awesome work going on.
I see that at a lot of these tech companies that have been that were born pre our modern definition of AI, since the Transformer. I'm curious, doesn't everybody want to be working on that? My observation is that many of these types of companies that have been around for a while are all scrambling to either integrate the technology into their product or internally, right? But, on the product side, I have seen so many people that are like, oh, the core stuff is boring. I don't care that it drives most of our revenue. I want to go work on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
I see how much these AI folks are making. I hear you, Bill, on your earnings report using the word agent and all these things. I want to be a part of that. You're telling me that's the future. Why wouldn't I want to work on the future? Does it create any of that tension in the company?
I actually think that would be an awesome thing. The more people who want to explore AI and make it part of our platform, I think the better. Obviously, we have other things that we're investing in and doing. One of the things that's helped GitLab grow in recent years is our security capabilities, SAST and DAST and dependency analysis and container scanning. And we do, a lot to help our enterprise customers ensure that they're, securing their software, their company, and their customer data. And it takes a specialized skill set to be good. For example, the code scanners often require people who are experts in a particular language that know, what kinds of vulnerability patterns exist in particular languages. And so, you imagine if you're that kind of expert, your skills are prized. You have a place to contribute at GitLab. Obviously, you're probably hired to do that. And there's always more work we can do to make those scanners, to make our security capabilities themselves better. And they're working on that. But you can also imagine a world where AI could help with some of that pattern recognition on security flaws, vulnerability detection, remediation. And so it's a chance for them both to continue to contribute, but also think about new approaches to security that are AI driven. And, to some extent, same thing's true of core DevOps capabilities like CI/CD, the ability to integrate code, package and deploy it is 10 years old. And, there's opportunity to rethink what role should AI play in that. And so every team has a set of priorities. Sometimes those are like core quality. Sometimes those are enhanced features for human engineers that we currently serve. And sometimes that's like, let's think through how can an agent help with these use cases so that the human engineer and the agent can work together, collaborate to get this done more quickly.
This company is like a $10 billion market cap. And, you've been a fancy executive for a long time. You were the chief product officer at New Relic before, like you come from a product and technology background before becoming the CEO. But I wonder, do you get insecure about the technology? Like people that are in the technology often tell me how they feel like they're really struggling to keep up. And they're in it every day. They're not managing people and companies and earnings reports and all these things, how do you feel about keeping up?
I have never seen the pace this high on innovation. It is hard to keep up. Again, why I'm really grateful for experts around me that are more dedicated to a particular function. And in this case, product and engineering experts that can go deep and understand every single day the next thing that's coming out and new approaches. So I learn a lot from them, and I study a lot myself just to try and keep up.
Study how?
Read and watch lots of videos and podcasts.
I'm in the middle of one right now. They're just dense. It's amazing. And if you were to re-listen to some of these 6 months ago, they're almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
And half the time completely wrong because someone's talking their own book about something that ended up not panning out. I have found myself carving out 30 to 45 minutes every day, whether it's at night or just during work, to get into these LLMs. I'll just live in ChatGPT to just feel the contours of the technology and the limits of what I'm bumping into and what's working and what's not. And I haven't found another more effective way yet. I'm curious if maybe I should go to reading, but to feel this thing, to feel what these things are doing and where their heads go, and what happens when I shift models, even a model in OpenAI, let alone across different models. And that's fascinating.
It is interesting to see the different kind of personalities and the different approaches. I think I have Perplexity, Claude, obviously ChatGPT, Grok. I think I have them all on my phone. Sometimes when I don't like an answer, I'll go to another one and I'll get a better answer. Actually, it's super interesting to see, and they evolve every time there's a new model. There's just a different experience, subtly and sometimes more dramatically. It is super fascinating. I'm curious, as a guy who asks lots of questions as part of your job, do you ever turn it around and have the AI ask you questions?
One of the best prompts that I have seen that I stole from, I think it was Toby at Shopify.
Hmm.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It was
I read his memo recently, but not.
okay.
I don't remember what
I
you're.
think it was Toby from Shopify. I hope I'm not. The prompt was basically knowing everything you know about me.
Oh,
Don't be shy. Like, what do you think would surprise me about myself? And it was a very scary, deep answer.
really?
Very scary, deep.
Well, it probably also has the context of all the things you say in these podcasts, right?
Yeah, well, I fed it all of the transcripts and everything.
Yeah.
But also with memory
Yeah.
that's been introduced not that long ago.
Right.
Not even memory within a chat, but memory within the system.
Yep.
It has everything that I've ever asked it.
Yeah.
It has all the context on something.
Yeah.
And so then I start to ask it questions based on the memory. And yeah, sometimes the answers are like freaky.
Yeah.
You know, I have told, in this case, ChatGPT, like, never bullshit me. Like, I always want, don't pander to me.
Yep.
Like, I always want you to be very direct. And now before it gives me an answer to something, it says, no BS, or to be blunt with you. You know, like, it just knows.
Yep.
Which is funny.
Isn't that amazing? I think the best advice I've seen is like, stop treating it like a tool and treat it like a collaborator.
Yeah.
Right. Like somebody you want to have as a lifelong collaborator. And so like giving it prompts like, don't BS me, really help it like better collaborate with you, better interact. Right.
But don't you think, like, to your point, Bill, about you going across these different LLMs like Perplexity and Anthropic and OpenAI and Grok, maybe we're just in a moment in time now, but a founder, a KP founder recently said this to me, like, with memory, and he's in OpenAI, ChatGPT has become the stickiest piece of software I've ever used in my life. And it might be the stickiest piece of software like in history.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has so much context.
Yeah.
That now, if I think about, like, I have gotten some dissatisfying answers recently. I'm going like to do some deep work about like some health things that I'm working on. I've just been kind of annoyed by some of the answers. I feel a little bit stuck because I can't port that memory into Anthropic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like it becomes like a proxy for a person or a relationship, right? Like, would you ever dismiss a relationship that was valuable to you?
Exactly. Which is also why now, interestingly, consensus view in Silicon Valley today is that, you know, maybe OpenAI is going to run away with this thing because they have the lead. And when you have the lead, even if it's incremental, it's tough to switch out if you've invested all of this kind of like time in getting to know you.
I don't know. I think it's still early days. I do think memory is an awesome new capability. And, we're excited at GitLab to incorporate memory into our agent interactions because, so much of software engineering, again, is like learning through experience and iteration. And like, you'll go fix a bug and then you'll get code reviewed. Somebody else or a machine will look at it and realize, oh, you missed this or you got that wrong. And that's a learning moment. The same thing happens for agents. They take a crack at a problem and a human looks at it and says, no, I want, this changed or that changed. And today the LLM itself doesn't learn from that, right? It's trained elsewhere. But if you build memory into the service and it remembers that interaction and it reflects on that interaction, the next time it makes a bug fix, it can remember, oh, I got that part wrong. Did I get it wrong this time?
But is that actually working well enough where you would say, go ship that in production? Because my experience, again, just like this is kind of simple Jubin playing around with this software, is that even the way that if I give it a bunch of transcripts for the podcast, I have to be quite specific today with the things that I want it to remember. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just remember everything. I have to say, okay, make sure you remember the titles of all of the guests because that's who it is. And the sequencing of when it was. If I have time sequencing questions of something before 2012 22 and after.
Yep.
Or if I want to query around like tonality, right? I have to make sure that I tell it to memorize. It's still not, I would certainly not ship anything like this if I had customers that were counting on it. We're not there yet.
Yeah. See, that's why I think we're still in early days. ChatGPT and all the other tools like it are awesome, and they're powered by the latest LLMs as they get updated, and they're getting new features like memory. But this use case that I was just describing around reflection and learning can be somewhat domain specific. So for you, you're trying to like give it the specific prompts to say, hey, I need to remember guest and title and these things, because ChatGPT as an application doesn't understand that, that data format out of the box. You have to give it that. And the same thing is true of software engineering. Like, we use those same LLMs to power, GitLab Duo, but we have to build the specific, use cases like memory and reflection on code reviews in order to give it that context, in order for it to then apply it the next interaction. And so that's the work that we're doing. That's the work every company has to do on top of the LLMs in order to make it domain specific for a given task.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. But can I pull that thread a little bit further and explore this with you? Then are we going to have domain specific everything?
Yeah. I mean, I think of course, there's a knowledge base, there's a level of competency that LLMs are growing at all the time. But the application of that knowledge, I think, is really important and often domain specific. And so that's the opportunity for so many of the applications, that exist today. By embracing AI, you get a super smart, competent, intelligence, but then you have to figure out how to apply it for a given domain. And unless the OpenAIs and Anthropics of the world go build every application.
Yeah.
And so, I think that is the opportunity at the application layer that so many of us are pursuing, because we have the data, we have the context, we have the human interaction today. And by infusing AI and bring agents to the table, we can power our users even more specifically than just a generic LLM can through ChatGPT.
And when stakeholders, like, let's just say you think analysts or some of the investors are some of the smartest folks that
Mm-hmm.
but like these investors, I mean, no disrespect, have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to like the future of these technologies. And I guarantee you, I haven't listened into your last earnings report, but there's probably some pretty big questions about how are you thinking about agents and AI stuff? Like how do you reconcile that?
Yeah. They're super smart at what they do, which is, they study companies and look at the numbers very deeply. They look at the, competitive market. They go interview customers and understand what customers are saying about you, understand even what, team members or employees in the company or those who've left say about the company and how it's doing. And so they're very good at all of that. And then making judgments on like, what do we recommend? What do we invest in? How do we do our business? They're not innovators. They don't purport to be. They don't know where technology is going. So they're doing those calculations based on the information they gather. And that's what I find super engaging, because they know a lot about the business and the company and what's going on around us. And that interaction is what I find so exciting.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I don't look to them for technology advice.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm curious, maybe on a more personal note, how do you organize your days? Before you were in an office, right? Like now you're not in an office. I'm just curious, how do you think about structuring a day, a week, a month, to-do lists, goals? Like how do you organize your time?
One of the most helpful, I think, leadership lessons I've learned is to create an operating system, basically, for myself and how I lead, how I run the company, and so it's pretty structured. I have, basically it all starts with people. Like, make sure I'm surrounding myself constantly by the right set of people, like we talked about before, great human beings with integrity, high trust, and excellence at their domain. And then and ladder up from that is like strategy. What is our vision? What is our approach to this business in order to create long-term customer value and therefore investor return? And then it goes to process. Like, what is the process by which I can measure the progress every single week of the business? And that cadence is, I found, super important. Previously I've had like a quarterly cadence, because quarterly boundaries are important for public companies, especially. But like, when I have a quarterly cadence of setting priorities and inspecting, it's just not, especially in the pace of the world today, is not frequent enough. When you set a quarter priority, it's, you check in the first month and everyone's like, yay, we're on track. This is such an awesome priority. We're going to nail this one. Second month, you check in, oh, we're off track a little bit. We're not sure we're going to make it. Some of this stuff might slip. Some of this stuff's not working out. And then the third month, it's like, oh, shoot, we failed. We got some of the stuff done, but most of it didn't get done. Like, that is the rhythm. That is the typical pattern. And so I moved to a weekly cadence now. So every day of my week is planned. And what I do is I take the priorities of the company and break them down into basically initiatives with key results that we expect to drive. I check in with each of those, about 15 of them every single week, to understand where we are, what progress we've made since last week, and how things are working out. That's super important because I think staying in the details of things and understanding as things evolve, if there's context the team needs, if there's coaching they need, if things are surprising them that you should be aware of. So you're not swooping in with like low context when things are blowing up and saying, oh, you're incompetent, or, this is totally screwed up, and, let's go change direction another time. It's so important. Like, no one wants that from a leader, especially a CEO. So that's how I kind of stay in touch. And every single day of my week is planned with those operating check-ins across the key initiatives of the company. I try and spend, several weeks in the quarter as well with customers, because I feel like that constant feedback and interaction with customers just keeps me with that customer mindset and speaking like the voice of the customer, both to the team and to the investor community. So that's something I try and prioritize every quarter as well. And then, like I said, I manage my energy. So it looks different in terms of the unstructured time every day. Sometimes it'll be, going deep on writing a piece of content for the external or internal audiences, or sometimes it means reading a bunch of things and getting sharper.
So your energy management is unstructured.
Yeah. Well, I'm constantly managing energy in the.
Well, I guess by design, because you have to flex to what your energy is or isn't.
Yeah. I mean, I try and create enough energy every day to do the structured work. And then when there's unstructured time, I decide, do I need a nap? Do I need to eat? Do I, have the energy to go in on something else?
Do you block off time for dinner with your wife?
Yeah.
Every day?
Every day.
Blocked?
Yep.
What time?
6:00. For
an hour?
Minimum an hour. I try to make it 2.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Phones away?
That's one of my bad habits. My wife always gives me
the phone's there.
I try to keep it away, but like, it's a terrible habit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure is.
I don't know if you struggle with that, but yeah.
I have just been a do not disturb monster recently, where I became so attached to the buzzing in my pocket that forget about like, dinner with my partner or whatever. Like it was constantly interrupting everything.
Yeah.
And so I've gone full do not disturb for hours on end. It's been really helpful. And certainly at dinner, I try, and I'm a pretty efficient eater. Some would say I maybe a little too efficient. But I try and keep my phone away for those
Good for you.
30, 45 minutes.
Gee, I got to do better.
Just for peace of mind.
Yeah.
And then you go back to work?
Yeah, usually.
Like 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
7:38?
Yep.
And then are you like, do you stay up late?
No, actually, I usually try to go to sleep early because then I wake up early.
What's
it
early?
Does depend. Like 10 p.m. I like to try to sleep.
Yeah.
And then usually up sometimes as early as 3, sometimes 5.
Yeah.
6 at the latest. Depends on if I'm up working in the night. If I've got the energy, I'll work at midnight or 3. In fact, one of my teams from 20 years ago, it's funny, just texted me the other day. I can't remember exactly what we were chatting about, but they're like, we were just talking about you and your 3 a.m. emails, how much we miss them. That was like 20 years ago. Like still.
You still do that?
Still do it when when I've got something I'm passionate about.
And then you'll just adjust your hours to later if you're up till 3?
Yeah.
Or you'll just bear through it.
I manage the energy. So
yeah,
if I'm not feeling like I can bring myself to the game, I'll take a nap in the middle of the day or, go to bed earlier that night.
Yeah. There's really not too many rules for you as it relates to energy management.
I mean, I've committed my life at this point to the company, and I love what I do. And so I do as much of it as I can.
How much do you eat? Do you eat every meal?
The worst part is being on the road traveling, because then you're usually doing dinners with customers or team or whatever. And the hours in restaurants are always different. When I'm working at home, I try to have a good breakfast, moderate lunch, and then dinner with Shelly. But it's usually pretty light on the breakfast and lunch.
It's tough on the road.
It is really hard.
It's tough on the road.
It is. Yeah. That and the sleep too. Sleeping in a different bed every night.
Sleeping is way worse, actually, I think, than eating. Because eating, you can at least just order what you want from the menu.
Well, when you're your age and you can eat about anything and not gain weight.
That's true.
It's so hard to eat healthy now.
And finding a way to like get a sweat in.
Yeah. Exercise is also tough.
My experience has been that when I'm traveling, I can't tell if I don't sleep well because I'm in a bed and that environment, the temperature, I like it cold, I can't get it cold enough in the room, or if it's because when I'm traveling, my mind is so in work. Like I have no time with my partner for dinner or whatever. Like it's all work. And then I go home to the hotel, and usually I've been in meetings I'm in meetings all day.
So you're catching up on email.
Right, like in bed,
yeah.
Which I rarely do.
Yeah.
And so then my brain just keeps going. So I don't know if it's mental or physical.
It's both, I think. And it's compounded worse. Yeah. Yeah. That's why you just got to work so hard that you're exhausted and sleep.
That's right.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Really fun. I'm excited to see like you're a few months in. 6 months?
December 5th. So
okay.
We're coming up 6 months.
Well, I'm excited to see how the next few quarters and years go.
Thank you.
Really exciting. Thank you. Are you hiring?
Of course.
What are you hiring for?
Everything.
And hiring anywhere.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing. I think we have team members in 65 countries right now.
That's wild.
And no offices. So wild. Everyone's working. Yeah.
When you hear the word grit, what do you think of?
I think it's becoming comfortable with uncomfortable things so you can take on hard problems. I think for me as well, like what I aspire to do is that with a smile and make it look easy. I'm still working on that because I think to accomplish great things, you got to tackle hard problems. But sometimes I forget to smile. So I'm working on that part.
I love that.
Those kind of people inspire me.
Bill, thank you. That's it for now. If you liked the episode, please leave us a review or go back into the archives where we've done more than 200 episodes with some fantastic folks. This podcast is a Kleiner Perkins production, and I'm Juven. Thanks for listening.